You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good evening, everyone. I am Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss, going to be joined by Mike Huesmann. Huesmann CFB upcoming in a few moments, and talk about the transfer portal and all the stories that are out there right now. We'll talk about the weirdness and wildness that was the Jalen Mbakwe situation earlier. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. And of course, if you have a question, feel free to add it. Just put your name and your location in there as well, because we are curious about what that is going on as well. But without further ado, let's go over Mike Huesmann from Mike Huesmann CFB on Twitter. Also, Mike Farrell Sports. Mike Farrell Sports. Is
Correct.
That what it is?
Correct. It is, yes.
Yeah, and you are the transfer portal expert and everything. And so we like to bring you on to figure out an outside perspective on Ole Miss sports and around the transfer portal in general. Ole Miss received a commitment from Deshaun Stribling from Oklahoma State just today. What do you know about Deshaun?
Good receiver. He was a good guy for them over multiple seasons. They were, maybe Florida State notwithstanding, the most disappointing team in the country this year. I mean, they were a preseason conference favorite and had a Heisman Trophy contender in Ollie Gordon, and everything fell apart for them. But Stribling is a good player. He was there. He started his career at Washington State, played there for 1 year, then 2 years at Oklahoma State. This year had a lot of hand injuries specifically, but nothing that, looks like it's going to be long-term. And he's a talented player, over 200 pounds, 6'2", 6'3". He's good.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
The other player that kind of got RPM to Ole Miss today was Charles Brantley, the cornerback out of Michigan State. He's already visited Ole Miss. What do you know about this player?
That roster is interesting. So, like a lot of guys, they got a new coach. Like Smith had been at Oregon State. They pretty much overhauled that roster. Now they're losing a lot of guys, which is something we've seen in the realities of the portal. But Brantley's another guy who fills a need. Last week I talked about Rayon Strader at Miami, Ohio, being a guy I thought would fill that void. He ended up committing to Auburn, and this is the spot where, going to be a mix of, could play on the outside, could be that nickel guy, but he'll be an immediate contributor.
One thing that was interesting, but we're going to take user questions right after the first break. So in a couple of minutes away for that, for people who want to do it. If you have any questions, get them in on the YouTube channel as well. We'll bring them up to Mike Huesmann and have a little Q&A. But the Jalen Mbakwe situation with Alabama was hilariously interesting. I think that's the best way to put that. You had a situation where Alabama just absolutely panicked about losing this athlete, that they just couldn't hang with whoever was offering. A lot of people assumed it was Ole Miss. Then all of a sudden, whenever it gets public and everybody's talking about it, obviously some Ole Miss writers comment on it as well. And then Alabama, this whole time, their collective has been trying to figure out a way to make Mbakwe happy, because he is just a super athlete. No matter where he went next year, he's probably going to start.
Yeah.
But the way it worked out and all of that, Mbakwe is staying at Alabama. They figured out a way to keep him. And the way they probably figured out a way to keep him was by upping their offer to him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see any other likely scenario other than they ponied up to maybe not meet his demands, but at least bridge the gap, with the difference between other schools, whether that was Ole Miss or not. But he's one of those guys where I think you said the word panic, and that's probably accurate, because the people there are rightly so, in the post-Saban era, worried they will fall back to reality. They will to some extent, but I think 3 losses to them is unacceptable, even though most people would take that season. And there's, that hair pulling of why are our guys leaving now? That never would have happened before. Well, there's a lot of reasons for it, but yeah, that's it.
There's a lot of Ray Perkins in what Kalen DeBoer has done this year.
That's a fantastic comparison. I never thought of that.
Yeah, he replaced Bear Bryant. DeBoer replaced Saban. There's so many similarities of what's going on, and the disappointment in the first year to Alabama. I mean, we have to see what they do. Like every Alabama coach in the last 100 years or something like that has won at least 10 games in a season. I mean, that's how good of a job that is. Yeah. So DeBoer's going to get right. The question is he going to look like Mike DuBose and Mike Shula and those 10-win coaches, or is he going to go up to the next level with, I think his ceiling would be Gene Stallings. I think that would be a ceiling.
I mean, that's a national championship coach. That's a pretty good ceiling. And the SEC, and I'm not talking about Ole Miss, because the SEC brethren on the whole have a high opinion of themselves, and it baffles me how little credit they gave DeBoer's past success. Maybe it shouldn't have baffled me, but it did to some extent.
Well, it's just a case to where we have seen it before, to where big name coaches that have been very successful come into the SEC, and you have to kind of sit back and look, like Steve Sloan, whenever he came to Ole Miss.
Brett Bielema was a good example of it too.
Yeah. To where you come in, you have all the success in the world, and you get down here, and you honestly have to have a cultural fit down here more so than Jimbo.
Jimbo's the perfect one there. It wasn't the right fit. He's a heck of a coach. Everybody loves badmouthing him. He deserves it. The guy didn't forget how to coach. It was just a really bad fit. Brian Harsin is another example of that.
Yeah. So there has to be a little bit of a fit thing.
Agreed.
Speaking of fit, I was just looking at the flag behind you. Rich Rod going back to West Virginia. Your thoughts?
I think it was a home run hire. How am I trying? Overall, a lot of the naysayers have pointed to, his career record. It's surprisingly not as good as a lot of people would think, but he took over West Virginia. They weren't very good. At Michigan, he struggled. They then won games. Brady Hoke won some games with his players. At Arizona, he was decent. Then Jacksonville State, I mean, he took them from FCS anonymity to winning an FBS conference in his second year. So I think he's a heck of a coach. And for them, I think it was a good move. But there's a chance it doesn't go well, too. I mean, using the portal today in a power conference is something he's not done before. And maybe that's not for everybody, but we don't know how that's going to go. And at his age, I think a lot of it will come down to the assistants he's going to hire. I think he'll do pretty good with that. He's one of those guys that has had his career assistants that have been with him for 20 years. You'd assume they would be with him again.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to me to see Rich Rod kind of go back. Dan Mullen going out to UNLV, which is hilarious that he's a Rebel coach now. But, and let's see, what was the other retread they got hired?
Scott Frost is at UCF.
Yes. Yep. And honestly, I think that's a good hire down the road in Orlando for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that works for him. I don't think Gus Malzahn was ever really a fit.
I agree. And I've been talking with one of my buddies, most of this season, and, the Gus years at UCF kind of turned into the Gus years at Auburn of, when is this going to end? He's not doing bad, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to be long-term. That's what happened.
Yeah. Pretty good. All right. So we're going to start taking some of your questions in the next segment and getting back to the transfer portal and talking about Ole Miss, who they're looking at coming up, who you might be interested in. I might answer a question on the chat about Deion Smith. we'll see exactly how that goes. But anyway, stick around for that. You know, it's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger than better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup. The SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, we are back, and we're going to take some of your questions that's going on. It might be a little bit slow. We'll talk about the transfer portal. Before we get started, any new names that Ole Miss fans need to be looking in that direction?
We were talking about Alabama guys earlier, and Damon Payne, a D tackle, entered the portal today. I think with Otis, going to Colorado, which we had talked about last week. I was still surprised to some extent by it, but Damon Payne, like most of the D linemen going there, was a very high recruit coming out of high school and is a big, stalwart in the middle type guy. I think another school to watch there could be Michigan. He is from Bellevue, the same high school as Underwood, the QB that they just got. So that's his home high school. But Ole Miss would seem to be a fit for him, and they've certainly taken transfers within the conference before.
So what else, of all the other players, what about like Zacharias Branch? Or anything there?
Heard a few things. Nobody, I think, really knows yet. It sounds like him and brother are both going to go to the same place, which brother actually will be a P4 starter somewhere. It's not like he's just along for the ride. To some extent, he'll get an offer for that, but he's decent. I think Texas could be in on that one. We're hearing Ohio State, but if I was betting, to me, he seems like he could be a Texas guy, the type of receiver Sark likes and is really good at X's and O's with.
Yeah, if you want to be a conspiracy theorist right now, you could look at the fact that Eric Singleton is on campus in Austin right now, and all of this Zacharias Branch stuff is going down as we speak, which means that Ole Miss probably has a better than average shot at Eric Singleton to team with Deshaun Stribling, and that's kind of a wide receiver pairing that'd be pretty dynamic.
Yeah. Another one that I think the Gators could be another one to watch for. They're going to need some receivers there with Legway coming back. They're gaining momentum, and it'd be a place for him where you're going to be well compensated NIL wise, and you're going to be the guy.
Yeah.
So Gators could be another one.
And Georgia at wide receiver. Georgia at wide receiver is I don't want to say hilarious, because it's not hilarious, because they're going after every wide receiver they can that's high level. Yeah. Because they have to, because Mike, I listened to the SEC championship game announcers say, hey, that wide receiver Georgia struggles because he's not a natural catcher of the ball. This is a Georgia wide receiver in 2024. I mean, so they're recruiting everybody. I think J. Michael Sturdivant is there right now. They're about to have a visit from Dane Key.
And we saw Ray Thomas is entering the portal again. He had some issues there, but yeah.
So we'll see exactly what it looks like, but yeah, I think the wide receiver room of what's going on, especially at Ole Miss, the other wide receiver rooms of people who need it is kind of falling in line for Ole Miss to get two of the targets they want.
Yeah. And it kind of is as good as Georgia is, as much as they have things rolling. If you're a receiver and you're looking at all the options from a pure on-field point of view, that might not be where you'd want to go. I get why they're having trouble getting some of these top guys in the portal.
Yeah. Pretty good. All right. So Saints fan 04 says anything on Deion Smith. I'm hearing the same thing that you're hearing, probably, Saints fan. I've heard that Deion Smith is going to try again to be eligible as a wide receiver. He was not eligible last time.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that if it happens, great. I do not expect it to happen, though, honestly.
I think Deion Smith is now in the Eric Gilbert realm of he was out of football. Maybe he'll be in the portal again. We don't know if we're ever going to see him play again.
Yeah. And honestly, what Deion Smith should probably do is get on with the Birmingham Stallions and do his football thing without having to go to school there.
Yeah. Or if he can play, it might not be a bad idea for him to go to one of the Sun Belt or American teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a wide receiver that Ole Miss kicked off his team from Texas A&M, a big name, ended up going to Boise State. Didn't play much, but he ended up getting on the team at Boise State. Forget his name. Jeff Sessions says, Steve, Jeff Sessions from Gulf Breeze, Florida. What do you think of Ole Miss's chances of landing Justice Haynes? Justice Haynes, Mike, is on campus right now. Everything that I've heard is positive, but everybody needs to realize with Justice Haynes, the line for him is going to be out the freaking door.
Yep. We know, or at least I know, the Gamecocks are also in for him. They will need to replace Rocket Sanders. So that they're in Gators, who I just mentioned, we're hearing there is interest there. And Ohio State, they're going to be tough to beat for anybody that they're in on. We hear Ohio State's interested. They're probably going to lose both Judkins and Henderson. He'd be a guy you take if you're Ryan Day.
Yeah, absolutely. At least there's going to be some big names on this. Alan Beck says, what linebackers are we pursuing, meaning Ole Miss? I know of one linebacker from Marshall that you might have an idea about more than most.
Yeah, that the whole Marshall team was in the portal, and there are a lot of things going on here. One that I was interested in, we talked about this guy a bit last week, but Andrew Jones from Grambling is a guy that's still, tackle machine, still in the portal. It sounds like, is having a lot of suitors that are top notch. I'm assuming, he'll make a decision before too long. John Lewis was a Mississippi State guy, in fact, and he's another guy who could make a lot of sense. The Marshall guy you talked about, is it Watson who you were thinking of?
It's like Jared Reed. The name. Okay. It was the tackling machine guy. Had like 115, 120 tackles last season. He's already visited Ole Miss. His name I had a brain tumor moment where it just the name just drifted out of my brain. So I apologize about that.
Oh, it might have been Hart. Yeah, because they've lost two linebackers and two edges. The one I thought you might be talking about Watson, who actually committed to Kentucky yesterday. But
okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. This is going to be excellent.
I don't think that's him who you're talking about. Honestly, even though I'm in blitz, we've had over 25 guys go in the portal. It is almost impossible to keep track of everyone.
Yeah. This is going to be really great podcasting and everything. But let me look up the name.
Jaden Yates is one of the linebackers who.
There he is. That's him.
And he, probably 210 to 220. He's not very heavy. Not very big. He just makes every tackle. The one thing to keep in mind with Yates will be if we get into the big school offers, he's a Columbus, Ohio native. I don't know if Ohio State's going to be in on him, but that is hometown.
Okay. So Columbus, how far away is Columbus, Ohio, honestly, from Huntington, West Virginia?
3 hours or so.
Okay. Yeah. Just a little geography question I was wondering about.
We're about an hour and a half from Cincinnati, 3 from Columbus. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we will continue with your questions. Remember, if you have questions, please put your location where you're asking from, and we will talk about transfer portal names to know and what is going on with the transfer portal expert, Mike Huesmann. Stick around. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Every college football playoff game is featuring a home team favored by a touchdown or more. I might be crazy, but Tennessee might be more built for cold weather than Ohio State. That might be the upset that everybody needs to follow. That is my hunch. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You know, nothing gets me more exciting than watching Ole Miss football and making a little extra cash while I'm at it. That is why I love Prize Picks. This week on Prize Picks, I'm thinking about the Gator Bowl and what could happen. I'm thinking Jackson Dart is going to throw for more than 150 passing yards, Jordan Watkins more than 80 receiving yards, and my sneaky pick is Hunter Perkins more than a sack and a half in the game. It's simple, it's fun, and it makes every game feel like you're part of the action. I had a flex play hit last week, and even though one of my picks missed, I still cashed out. That is why Prize Picks is my go-to. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports opinions into real money. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks, and with the weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, you can even get more value. Think discounts on player projections by up to 25%. Plus, Prize Pick puts its members first, and when my picks hit, I get my winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Here's the best part. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, we're back for the last segment with Mike Huesmann. We're talking transfer portal. We're doing Q&A, and we're seeing what's up. Tony Pierce has this question: is corners and safeties, and specifically safeties. On tomorrow, my show tomorrow morning, I talk about John Saunders and Trey Washington and the impact that they've had on the back end of that Ole Miss defense. There probably needs to be some safeties that are brought in. Are you seeing or hearing about any safeties that Ole Miss might be looking at?
Talked a little bit last week about Stroman from Virginia Tech, who was a very good player in 22 and 23, missed this whole season with a shoulder injury. But a lot of the safeties have come off the board. Zachariah Poyser is one I had mentioned, who's a Jacksonville State guy. He committed to Miami today. Benjamin Perry had been at Louisville. He committed to UCLA. So Stroman probably is the best safety left. And after him, one of the next best safeties is Zion Branch, Zachariah's brother. Like he's a guy, like I said, he's a starter type guy. Caleb Weaver was another good one at Sam Houston State. I don't know that he follows Casey Keeler. He's probably too good to be playing at Temple, but you never know at that point if you're going to follow your coach. And the last one I think could be worth a look. I don't know if this guy's looking at Ole Miss, but it might be worth it for them. Is CJ Hurt from Florida Atlantic. Pretty good player.
Okay. That's interesting stuff. And we got about 5 minutes until the end of the show.
Yeah, that's one of the thinnest positions right now, with Thieneman from Purdue, Wisniewski from NDSU, Devontae Smith from Bama. Most of the top safeties have already committed.
So let's turn our attention real quick before we get out of here to the college football playoff. I'm just going to ask you straight up, what out of the teams that are playing this weekend, who is the most likely to get upset?
Ohio State.
Ohio State.
I've been fading the Buckeyes for several weeks, and it's largely because of injuries. No team in the playoff is more beat up than they are. Their O-line is decimated. If you would have looked at their preseason O-line to now, they're starting the right tackle and 4 guards. So that tells you where they're at up front. And Tennessee's one of the saltiest front sevens in the country, maybe the best run defense in the country. Their D linemen and inside backers have to be licking their chops looking at this Ohio State O-line. Now, Nico hasn't looked great all the time, but out of the 4 home teams, I think Ohio State's the most likely to lose.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Sampson, it's one of those things where everybody's like, the SEC is going up to play in cold weather. Well, Ohio State's playing probably the most cold weather ready team in the whole playoffs because Tennessee's defense and running game, that's what they do.
Yeah, Dylan Sampson is a heck of a player. I'm a little surprised we didn't hear about him more for postseason awards, but that happens occasionally when you're playing at the same position as a guy who puts up, transcending numbers. So it's one of those things that hurt him.
Yeah, I feel bad that Genty didn't get more recognition than he did.
I don't know if I feel bad for him. I mean, he won the Doak Walker, which is their, the biggest award for that position. He won one of the, I think Maxwell he won one of the Player of the Year awards.
Okay, he did get that. Okay,
he did get one of them
because there's a good chance in the playoff game, whichever bowl game they're in. Maybe it's the Fiesta Bowl. I'm not sure exactly.
Oh well, almost yes. Fiesta Bowl, winner of Penn State SMU.
Yeah, and you have a situation with him where he needs like 180 yards to break Barry Sanders' record, and that's a record that I did not think would get broken.
Yeah. If he plays Penn State, that's going to be a tough one to get. Their D's pretty good too.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty salty. Man, how about Penn State, man? If Penn State does not make it to the Final Four, James Franklin just needs to look in the mirror and say, it's on me.
Yeah. It might be. I mean, it is in that case. Yeah. They have to look at that draw and think, whoa, we got a home team or a home game against a team who was a coin flip to get in. And then we're going to play a G5 team 1,000 miles from home, which is also 1,000 miles from their home. You got to feel pretty good about that.
And also looking at the playoff games this weekend, which is the most likely to be a blowout?
I think it's probably the Penn State game. But the thing with that is Penn State and Notre Dame don't blow teams out, and Indiana doesn't get blown out. Like, I would probably say Notre Dame is the most likely to win. But if I'm saying most likely to blow out, I got to say Penn State, even though Texas certainly has the capability to do it. You don't know what Clemson team is going to show up.
Yeah.
But I would probably I was going to also lean with Penn State. SMU's been on an emotional roller coaster. They were flying high. They had the gut-wrenching loss. You'd think that would be behind them, but Penn State has to be in a good spot right now. Yeah.
The one thing about Penn State, and I actually saw this happen in the Peach Bowl last year, they do not know how to deal with tempo. Tempo eats them alive. And if SMU can get tempo going, Penn State that game could be a lot closer than the experts think.
Certainly could be. Yeah. I don't know that any of the 4 games will be too lopsided. I think they're all pretty good matchups. And like I said, I'm on Tennessee and then the other 3 home teams. But, that's just me.
All right. Thanks again for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Thank you to Mike Huesmann for joining us at the transfer portal expert from Mike's Feral Sports. So give him a listen, give him a following at Huesmann CFB as well on Twitter. You can check him out there. Thank you very much, Mike. And we will talk to you later, buddy.
Yep. Take care, everybody.